Your little real estate game ends here. Those words burned themselves into my mind and refused to fade. The voice belonged to my brother-in-law Alejandro Castillo, who was sitting in the plaintiff's seat with a triumphant look on his face. He had whispered that poison into my ear just minutes ago, right before the hearing began. He entered the courtroom with his family in tow and passed by me for a fleeting instant. Before I could even respond, the bailiff announced the opening of the court and Judge Brown entered. It was an insult delivered with perfectly calculated timing. Beside Alejandro, my biological sister Valeria wore a satisfied smile. In the gallery, our parents nodded stiffly as if asserting what they believed to be their daughter's rightful claim. The trial was unfolding in their favor exactly as they intended. Their lawyer was presenting a carefully fabricated story of lies. Miss Elena Vargas has long exhibited extreme emotional fluctuations. She alternates between periods of rational clarity and periods of impulsive instability. The lawyer continued in a voice heavy with feigned sympathy. This contract was signed during one of her rational phases. At the time, she stated this is a vacation home for the whole family and signed of her own free will. However, recently she has entered another unstable phase and is now attempting to renege on this legitimate promise in order to monopolize a valuable asset. It was flawless logical armor. Because I was unstable, I needed a guardian. But because the contract was signed when I was rational, it was valid. They dismissed the blood, sweat and tears of my 8 years of work as nothing more than the impulsive purchase of a fickle woman. Worse, they were trying to redefine even my sanity in whatever way suited them. Alejandro looked at me, the corner of his lips twisting into a smirk. His eyes said it clearly. We are the ones who write the story of your life. This is what they called everything I had built. Elena's little real estate game. I simply sat there in silence watching their farce unfold. Judge Brown lowered her gaze to the contract that had been submitted. Her eyes stopped dead on the section listing the property details. A brief silence fell. Then the judge slowly raised her head and looked straight at me. Miss Vargas, this is one of the 12 properties in your real estate portfolio. Correct. How very interesting. I would very much like to review the rest of your holdings as well. The air in the courtroom froze. Alejandro's smile stiffened. I quietly watched as the color drained from Valeria's face and from our parents as well. A heavy silence descended over the courtroom. Moments ago, their lawyer had been overflowing with confidence. Now it felt like a lie from another world. Alejandro's ugly grin remained plastered to his face, frozen in place. Valeria stared back and forth between the judge and me, disbelief written all over her face. Our parents could only gape, mouths hanging open, unable to comprehend the reality before them. They had truly believed in the image they themselves had created. The illusion of a pitiful, incompetent Elena. They believed I was recklessly burning through money, standing on the brink of ruin exactly as that illusion dictated. That was why it never even crossed their minds that the words 12 property real estate portfolio would come from a judge's mouth. A memory from 8 years ago stabbed into my mind like a knife. In my parents' living room filled with expensive furniture, my father's voice rang out. We've decided to stop paying your college tuition after this term. Valeria's wedding is expensive, and honestly investing in you any further would be a waste. My mother followed without hesitation. That's right, Elena. You have no talent. You should find someone suitable as soon as possible and settle down. At that moment I understood. In this household I was the first to be discarded. My dreams and efforts held no value compared to my sister's wedding decorations or my parents' social image. At the bottom of that cold despair I made a quiet vow. I would rely on no one. I would let no one decide my worth. Absolute financial power would be my armor and my sword. That was when my little real estate game began. But it was never a game. It was a lonely, brutal fight. Studying economics and law on my own, living in libraries, juggling multiple part-time jobs, forcing my way forward like carving a path through the wilderness. While they mocked me, I bought my first small apartment and saved for the down payment on the next. My battle continued quietly, unnoticed by anyone, but steadily without fail. I pulled my consciousness back from those memories to the present courtroom. Beside me, my lawyer, Mr. Johnson, gave me a small, composed nod. It was time to strike back. Mr. Johnson rose slowly to his feet. Unlike my flustered family, his movements were calm, filled with unshakable confidence. From a massive briefcase he produced a thick stack of meticulously organized files. That alone made the single forged contract they had submitted look utterly insignificant. Judge Brown, I would like to explain the asset portfolio of my client, Miss Elena Vargas. Mr. Johnson's voice rang out clearly, reaching every corner of the courtroom. First, the initial property that was purchased 8 years ago, a studio apartment in the Old Town district. The down payment was saved entirely by Miss Vargas through working multiple jobs simultaneously. I glanced toward my father in the gallery. Confusion and panic were written all over his face. Johnson continued, his tone steady and matter-of-fact. The second property was acquired 14 months later, a small office building in the downtown commercial district. It was purchased using rental income from the first property combined with further savings accumulated by Miss Vargas herself. With each property, Johnson listed the color drained from Alejandro and Valeria's faces. Inside their heads they were surely calculating in desperation just how much wealth Elena, the woman they had sneered at as a pathetic single woman, had quietly built. And when their entire plan was beginning to collapse at its foundation, the judge leaned forward, listening intently. This was no longer a simple family dispute. The existence of a vast asset empire was about to be revealed publicly in the courtroom for the first time. Johnson continued on to the fifth, then the sixth property, reading through the list of assets I had acquired. Each one was to me a record of battles carved out with blood and sweat. When the address of the sixth apartment building was read aloud, I instinctively closed my eyes. That property had nearly broken me, but ultimately made me stronger. Today, the very property Johnson was describing is one of the highest yielding assets in my entire portfolio. The symbol of my despair had become ironically a powerful weapon, one now shattering my family's last remaining hopes. I slowly opened my eyes and looked at my sister Valeria. Her lips trembled as if she had seen a ghost, her hand clutching her husband Alejandro's arm. As Johnson moved on to the seventh and eighth properties, a murmur rippled through the gallery. The bailiffs and other lawyers were visibly stirred. What was being revealed was the portfolio of a single invisible power player who had quietly yet decisively shaped the city's real estate market. I did not look away from my parents. My mother Sophia no longer had the composure to play the tragic heroine. My father Don Javier had moved from confusion to anger and now to humiliation. The sound of Johnson turning a page echoed through the quiet courtroom. Ninth property. His voice sounded like the opening gong of my revenge against the past. And the 10th property, downtown District 15, Riverside Avenue commercial building commonly known as the Phoenix Lofts. The moment Johnson spoke that name, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted once again. It was a silent shock laced with awe. Several journalists in the gallery hurriedly began taking notes. The Phoenix Lofts. That name is known to anyone involved in business in this city. That project was the greatest gamble of my life. I looked at Alejandro. His face had gone ashen. The impossible-to-book French restaurant he bragged about using for dates sat on the top floor of the Phoenix Lofts. Valeria must have realized it too. Judge Brown narrowed her eyes behind her glasses. The Phoenix Lofts, I see. She raised a hand to stop Johnson. She had clearly decided there was no need to read any further down the list. She turned a severe gaze toward Alejandro, Valeria and their lawyer. Counsel, moments ago you claimed that Miss Elena Vargas, your client's sister-in-law, lacks judgment and engages in reckless spending. However, the facts revealed here tell a very different story. The judge's voice was calm, but it cut like steel. Then Johnson delivered the decisive blow. Your Honor, there is one more important property. He produced the final file, the 12th property, the Grand Majestic Theatre, a structure officially designated as a city historical landmark. The courtroom's shock reached its peak. Johnson continued. Miss Vargas personally funded the restoration of this theatre. And in recognition of her contribution, she has received an official commendation from the City Historical Preservation Society. The fabricated image of a mentally unstable Elena collapsed without a trace under the weight of undeniable evidence. I simply watched in silence. My 8 years of solitary struggle were speaking more eloquently than words ever could. Now then, Your Honor, there can no longer be any doubt that Miss Elena Vargas is an exceptionally capable individual who has also made significant contributions to society. Johnson paused, then addressed the entire courtroom. The goal was to strip Miss Vargas of control over her assets. But if she owns 12 properties, why were they so obsessively fixated on just one? This mountain vacation home. He held a single document high. This is an article from a luxury lifestyle magazine's website. 6 weeks ago, this very vacation home was featured as one of the most noteworthy hidden luxury retreats of the moment. The ugly motive was laid bare under the bright lights of the courtroom. At last Alejandro finally screamed. Lie. It's all a lie. There's a contract. Elena signed it. Judge Brown silenced him with an icy glare. Mr. Castillo, regarding the contract you submitted, there are several very interesting points. Johnson spoke up. Your Honor, we commissioned a professional handwriting analysis as well as a materials analysis of the paper and ink used in its creation. We submit the expert reports as evidence. According to the findings, first, the signature is a crude forgery that does not match Miss Elena Vargas's handwriting with a probability of 98.7%. More importantly, the paper and ink. Analysis shows that the ink used in this contract is a newly released product that went on the market just 3 months ago. The date written on the contract, however, is 1 year ago. A ripple of suppressed laughter spread through the gallery. The forgery had now been proven scientifically and decisively. I watched silently as everything collapsed around them. This was the inevitable consequence for those who try to steal what belongs to others by force. Chris and Valeria were deathly pale, unable to utter a single word. In the gallery, our parents trembled as they were forced to confront the reality. Judge Brown slowly reviewed the forensic reports, then turned toward me. Her expression softened, still firm but now layered with something human. Miss Vargas, first, I wish to apologize for forcing you to waste your valuable time on such a baseless claim. And she continued. If you are willing, I would like to hear directly from you what you have thought and what you have accomplished over these past 8 years and why your family knew nothing of this remarkable success. I rose slowly to my feet. Beside me, Mr. Johnson gave a firm, encouraging nod. I took a deep breath. Then one by one I looked at the faces of the family who had betrayed me, belittled me, and tried to take everything from me. It was time to bring this farce to an end with my own words. Thank you for your consideration, Your Honor. Then I turned toward the witness stand and began speaking to my family and to everyone in the courtroom. My voice did not shake. 8 years of solitary struggle had given me unshakable strength. The reason I never told my family anything is simple. Because they did not want me to succeed. 8 years ago, I told my father I wanted to start investing in real estate. He said, "You have no talent. You'll be taken advantage of and fail." My mother said, "A woman's happiness comes from finding a good man." Instead of believing in my potential, they forced the role of incompetent daughter onto me because that was more convenient for them. When I bought my first small apartment, my sister Valeria laughed and said, "Who would ever rent a place that old and dirty?" Her husband Alejandro Castillo called me a pathetic single woman and looked down on me while I worked myself to the bone. Not a single person could meet my gaze. They wanted me to fail. Somewhere deep down they expected me to be poor, miserable, and eventually come crawling back to them. Because my success would prove that everything they believed, the values they forced onto me, was wrong. So when they learned of my success, their response wasn't celebration. It was to steal it and to destroy it. The forged contract they submitted, the document, was not merely a tool of fraud. It was the embodiment of their desire. The ugly wish that I would be exactly as they said, foolish, reckless, and incapable of accomplishing anything without their help. Judge Brown, regarding their claims about my so-called mental instability, I have something to say. Yes, I may have been unstable at times. For 8 years I walked this path alone, misunderstood by everyone, enduring ridicule from my own family while building an empire from nothing. Not a single one of my decisions was made on impulse or whim. Each of the 12 properties was acquired through meticulous calculation, careful strategy, and above all an unshakable determination to carve out my life with my own hands. Finally I looked straight at my sister Valeria. What they wanted was a single $1.5 million vacation home. What I was protecting was my life over the past 8 years. These 12 properties. No, the empire I built myself. When I finished, the courtroom was utterly still. Only the echo of my words lingered in the air. After a long, heavy silence, Judge Brown finally spoke. "Miss Elena Vargas, thank you for your courageous testimony." She then directed her gaze to the plaintiff's bench. "Miss Valeria Castillo, Mr. Alejandro Castillo, your actions go far beyond a simple family dispute. You knowingly used forged documents and filed malicious false claims to deceive this court, attempting to unlawfully seize another person's property and destroy her reputation. This is an egregious act of fraud. Accordingly, this petition is dismissed in its entirety. Furthermore, I declare that the allegations of perjury and fraud in this case will be formally referred to the prosecutorial authorities." Following my testimony, Judge Brown's rulings marked the beginning of the end for them all. I obtained permanent restraining orders against all of them, and my 12 properties were placed under ironclad trust management. From now on, they have no legal way to interfere in my life. They merely reaped the consequences of the greed and envy they sowed themselves. There is no place for them in my world anymore. My future begins now from the 12 fortresses I have fought to protect. Thank you for listening to today's story. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. See you in the next story.